So, this portion of the unit is going to be over sauces. Sauces happen to be one of my favorite things. I really love food that has been highlighted with some type of fun sauce. So, a sauce is generally a thickened liquid. It's going to add flavor, it's going to add moisture, it's going to add richness. So, any type of gravy, it's not just dipping sauces or dressings. You can add all types of different sauces to food. It's going to make things more visually appealing. It shouldn't disguise the food. It should complement it and go well with it. So in modern day gourmet culinary, sauce is really bright and colorful, and it can be used in lots of different ways to decorate a plate. And so what you're seeing here is some examples of some really finely presented and garnished food items. When you are getting into the gourmet kitchen brigade, a saucier is someone who actually specializes in making sauces. In certain restaurants, that might be their whole entire job. So they can be hot ones, they can be cold ones. There's a whole variety of sauces and sauce making. So the basic ingredients of sauces, you generally start with a liquid component. So this is typically stock or milk or cream. You can also utilize wine, or a mother sauce itself can be the base of a new sauce. You want to have something that is aromatic. This is going to add some flavor, complexity, and character. And then you need a thickener. So the thickener is going to make it rich. It's going to add body. That's the difference between a liquid versus, like, say, a gravy with that silkiness, that body, that mouthfeel to it. So typically a roux, a beurre, a slurry, or a liaison are going to be what is going to thicken that sauce. So we'll cover those. Doesn't want to move. There it goes. So a roux is going to be one of the most common. We have utilized this quite a bit. You probably have already seen it in my class. If you have ever made breakfast gravy, sausage and gravy, like with biscuits, then you have utilized a roux. So a roux is fat and flour, and it's usually a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you had 2 tablespoons of one, you would typically utilize 2 tablespoons of the other. With practice, you can see what it looks like, and when you've added too much or just enough flour on that. A roux should look like this photo here. It should be thick. It shouldn't be just like super fatty or greasy, but it also shouldn't clump together and make a paste either. So it still needs a little bit of a looseness to it. So this is a great picture there. You want to stir it until it's blended, and then you would cook that roux to the desire, depending on what you're making. So a blonde, the roux would be one that is just not really cooked. You kind of just blend the flour together and then you put that in there. We will be utilizing that one when we make, say, the Alfredo sauce. A darker roux, a brunette or a brown, you would actually cook the flour around so you get that kind of nutty aroma. And that really deepens the flavor of the actual sauce that you're making. So when I make breakfast gravy, I actually cook the flour and make my roux quite a bit darker. If I'm making gumbo, then I definitely go quite a bit darker on that. So it just kind of depends on your sauce. Always add a cold roux to a hot liquid, or cold liquid to a hot roux, and this is going to prevent lumps. You don't want lumps of roux in your food product. In the same way that you also can't add flour itself just to, like, if your gravy isn't thick enough, you can't just put flour in there. It will create flour balls, and they're really gross, and they'll like pop in your mouth, and it's disgusting. So you always need to combine the flour with the fat, and that helps it combine into the liquid. It emulsifies everything together. So here are your colors of roux. You have a white, you have a blonde, which is just very lightly cooked, and then you have a brown or a brunette. So this one is a little more flavorful and it smells nutty. The darker you cook it, the more flour you need to thicken your food item. So a white roux is the least amount of cooking time. Light colored sauces like a bechamel, it's a little bland and starchy, so you want to be kind of careful on not use too much, but it does have the most thickening power, so you don't need very much. But you don't want to make your food taste like wallpaper paste. A blonde roux is cooked a little bit longer. The flour is a very, very light golden. It's a little nutty. And this would be used for like a veloute. Bechamel is going to be like a thickened milk or cream. A veloute is going to be a thickened stock, like some chicken stock. It's going to be a little bit more flavorful, the blonde roux is, and a little bit nuttier. The dark one, though, that is cooked the longest. It has the least thickening ability, so you do need more of a dark roux to actually thicken the same amount of liquid. And this is used for quite a few things. I definitely like a kind of darker cooked roux when I'm making breakfast gravy. I do not like a super pale white milky gravy. So when you make a roux, you heat the fat in the saucepan, and then you add the flour. You stir them together. You kind of form a little bit of a paste. Stir it continuously and cook it over medium heat into your desired color. A beurre is very similar to the roux. The difference is you actually combine the butter and flour in equal parts. You don't melt it in the pan. So you take like a bowl, and you want to kind of like blend it with your fingers or a fork or something, and you make like a paste out of the butter and the flour. And then you add the beurre to the liquid at the end of the cooking process, and then it will thicken and act as a thickening agent. So this is a good thing to do if you have not had enough roux, or if you're making a sauce, it's not thick enough, then you can add a beurre to it and thicken it up. You just have to remember, make sure your flour has been blended together with some fat, and don't just add the flour into itself. So if you don't want fat in your product and you want a lighter thickening product, then you can use cornstarch. And cornstarch in a cold liquid is called a slurry. You can also use other flour is used less in this instance than cornstarch is. For a slurry, cornstarch is your most common, but you can also combine flour and water together and create a slurry. But the cornstarch is just really nice, and it's really light. You can't just add the cornstarch to the liquid. You have to make sure that you make the slurry first, and that dissolves that cornstarch, and then you can pour it in. So slurries are used to thicken like sweet and sour sauce, or the egg drop soup, or a lot of Asian soups and things are utilized with the slurry. Don't boil it too long, or it will break, and it does bad stuff. So it's used in clear sauces and Asian dishes a lot. A liaison is made out of eggs, so it is egg yolks and heavy cream, and this is used to finish a couple of very specific types of sauces. It's very, very rich in flavor and smoothness, but it is extremely important to temper the liaison so you don't curdle the eggs. So there's a couple other chapters to talk about tempering. Essentially, when you have eggs and you've whipped them up and they're cold, if you just take the cold eggs and you put them directly into the hot liquid, then the eggs are going to cook immediately. And then you have floating bits of scrambled eggs in your product, and you don't get a thickened product, and it's gross. So you actually want to take some of your hot product and mix just a little bit of it into the eggs and stir it around, and a little bit more of the hot product, and a little bit more of the hot product. And you do that gradually. And then what happens is you heat the eggs slowly, and then you can add them to the hot sauce, and then they will do the thickening and not the curdling, which is really nice. You can also do some tempering with a microwave. So when I do a lot of my custards or puddings or pie fillings, I have my students do them actually in the microwave, and it is pretty good. And then the eggs don't cook and make scrambled eggs. So the sauces are divided into two groups. I'm going to pause it here, and I will make video 2 of this particular part of the unit.